Inflation fears, consumer prices rising by 4.1%, reaching their highest level in 17 years. Jumps in gas and food prices led the charge. Those figures complicate the picture for the Federal Reserve Board as it considers whether or not to lower the interest rates to prop up all the sagging markets. Would a cut lead us in a recession by driving up the prices we pay for just about everything? Let's ask our Fox panel, including Nicole Ridgway from smartmoney.com. Nicole, first to you. Analyze these numbers for us. They were bad, biggest jump in 17 years. On the other hand, the market's absorbing it pretty well right now.
The market's absorbing it pretty well, but I think that we can expect the Fed to probably cut rates. I think that that's generally accepted, and I think it's already been worked into the market.
Even with these inflation fears?
Yeah, even with the inflation fears, because I think that the Fed's attention right now is turned towards slowing growth and sort of stimulating the economy. That's where a lot of attention has been paid recently. Cuts alone, though, I don't think are going to fix the situation and could definitely worsen the inflation side of this argument.
Well, Peter Schiff, you've been talking about the debasing of the American dollar for a long time, and frankly, a lot of what you said has turned out to be true. However, I'm wondering, how do you stop the debasement of the dollar? Do you just do what Volcker did in 1981 and tighten up so much that you have a 2-year-long recession?
Well, I mean, we've got to do that. But unfortunately, when Paul Volcker raised interest rates up to 20% in 1980, America was a wealthy enough nation that we can afford to pay it. Plus, also, most of our debt, we had 30-year government bonds. Now we have almost a $10 trillion debt financed with Treasury bills. So if we actually had to raise interest rates to defend the dollar, we would have a far worse recession than what we had in 1982.
So let me just get a figure, though, from you, Peter. What rate, if they were not high enough in 1981 at 20% for what we have now, what rate would they have to be risen to in order to stifle inflation?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a rate high enough at this point. Well, because if we raise the rates, I think it's going to put even more downward pressure on the dollar.
So what do we do, Peter?
So
That's the question.
What we've got to do is we've got to dismantle the government. We're spending way too much money. We've got to make the government smaller. We've got to stop printing all this money. We've got to get on a sound monetary system. You're talking about consumer prices rising at the fastest pace in 18 years, but those official estimates are probably less than half of what's actually happening to consumer prices. And they're going to go up even faster. So
but
we've got to turn this around.
Let me switch to your friend, Yaron. Yaron, I know you agree with Peter's prescription, but you have to be a realist. It ain't going to have. We're not going to have a total dismantlement of the government. So within the realm of reality, what can we do?
Well, we don't need to dismantle the government tomorrow, but we need to start. We need to start cutting government spending. We need to start dismantling the regulatory state. We need to start taking those measures that long-term are going to secure this economy and start us producing wealth again. Cutting interest rates is just going to fuel inflation. Sending checks to people is going to fuel inflation. It's going to do nothing long term. We need to get back to what the U.S. government was supposed to do, that the Founding Fathers wanted to do, and that's protect individual rights, not spend on all these multiple programs, redistribute wealth, get into every aspect of our lives. We need government to back out.
Well, I think everybody, even Mike Norman, you would say amen to that as well, but the problem is we have to talk about what is capable, what we are capable of doing.
Look, the government is no bigger now. In fact, it is smaller now as a percentage of... Hey, Peter, can I speak here? The government is smaller now than just about any time in the post-World War II history when you look at the government at its budget as a percentage of GDP. Let's put things into context here. In terms of regulation, we are the least regulated country on the face of the earth. In terms of wealth creation, there is no other country, and there has never been a country in the history of the world that has created so much wealth as the United States, and it continues to be the case. Yaron, you said something earlier about, we're losing business because of Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley has been a benefit because it has made companies become more transparent. Wait a second, Yaron. Many companies themselves are thankful of Sarbanes-Oxley because it has forced them to look within their own operations and see what exactly their accounting is like before they did not know.
Yaron, go ahead.
I mean, that's completely ridiculous. If you talk to CEOs, if you talk to businessmen, what they tell you is that the cost of their companies, this has cost tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to American businesses. The net cost to the U.S. economy is at least $1.5 trillion by conservative estimates. This has been one of the most wealth-destroying pieces of legislation in the last 40 years. And going to the percentage of GDP, absolutely. Since the 1950s,
pure, unadulterated
government keeps, that's nonsense, Mike. Talk to these
Which
guys,
is stronger,
run the
hogwash or
numbers,
nonsense? I don't
get
know.
educated.
One of the reasons capital...
Hold on. Let me just ask Nicole if she could break this tie. Can you? We've got a rubber match here. Break the tie for us. Was Sarbanes-Oxley good or bad for the economy?
I think it's good. I think that we set an example to world markets,
girl,
to other countries.
So
that's why.
So now, and Peter Schiff, I know you agree with your odds. So now we have another bumper.
Right. Look, Mike, you can still recognize that we have a problem. You're trying to make this into a thing of patriotism, talking about how great everything is.
Are you telling? You try to turn it into how bad everything is. I deal in facts. You deal in fantasy.
Hold on. Get to your point. Hold on, gang. Without the birdseed gang, Peter, get to your point, please. Okay, go ahead.
Mike he's got to unwrap the flag from around his face so he can see.
The birdseed, get to your point, Peter.
America was a great country when we produced and when we saved, when we had low taxes and low regulation. That country doesn't exist anymore. I'd like to get it back, but I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay just so it sounds good and I can pretend to be a patriot.
But at the same time, Peter, what you got to admit is what we have going for us. We do have extraordinary workers in the United States. We have, by the way, more people. Hold on. Excuse me. Let me just say one thing. We have more people trying to get into this country, dying to get into this country than any other country in the world.
What made America so great was not that Americans were better than anybody else.
All right.
Hold on. What made our country great was because we had